In the beginning, I created Adam and Eve. Then I created a whole bunch of people. After a brief time, some of those people started getting confused. So I sent my son to Earth to clarify a few things. And then I created many, many more people. In 1936, I saw a special job needed to be done. I looked around on Earth, but couldn't find anyone just right for the project. So I looked around up here and asked one of our angels if he'd like to make a trip to get some important work done for me. And you, Bobby, you're the angel that volunteered. Once on Earth, your parents christened you Robert Joseph Welsh. You did a good job of staying out of trouble as a kid, Bob, and keeping a low profile. A very low profile.
I think Bobby Walsh always looked very angelic when you carried a cross or assisting the priest. You know, I know I used to nip at the wine after Mass in the back of the thing, but I never seen Bobby do it.
All I know is he got into the junior high up in that grade that the girls all had a crush on him.
However, as you were ordained and became a priest and teacher, you became very popular and made a powerful impact on many people.
Excuse me, who? Father who? Walsh?
Father who? Never heard of him, never heard of him.
I'd always wanted to know who that guy in the glasses and white hair was who always gave us free days.
I've heard of him.
Okay, Bob, just kidding. You did make a few friends along the way.
Oh, I've known him since he was a sophomore in high school. In fact, I had him in speech class, and he was a good student. And he was very dependable and responsible. I remember once we had a vocation day at Ignatius, and because people are so closed in, they're a little afraid to admit that they want to think about the seminary when they're in high school. And so we were talking about, I'm guessing how many would be coming, and only one came. It was Bob Welsh.
Bob and I first met at the end of high school before we were going to enter the Jesuits. We basically had completed our high school work, had applied, but unfortunately, the Jesuits didn't think that the 4 years of Latin that both of us had received at one of their schools was quite adequate enough for us to get into their seminary. So we had to go to a summer school program at John Carroll, and that's where we met that summer before.
Well, I've known him about 45, 46 years, just dear friends.
Well, relationship with Bob Welsh goes back a while. I was a senior in high school, and he was a theology teacher.
In fact, you did some wonderful things with the gifts that I gave you.
Father Welsh makes us feel very comfortable at school. He doesn't make us feel insignificant. And when we're walking down the hallways, it's always good to get an encouraging nod from him, or hello, if he knows us by name, which is always one of his great strengths, I think. But I'm on the Board of Regents. I'm being the Senate President, and I see him also work with the business part of the school, which is a tremendous asset because he can relate to a high school as being one where the students come and learn. He was a teacher himself, but he also can relate with the business side of it, which makes him a great leader and a good dealer as well.
He shocks kids as they walk down the hall, and he knows their name. Amazing ability.
I think a lot of us are envious of the ability that he had to interact with them and the relationships that he's fostered with, hundreds, thousands of young men, if you will, during that time.
The bell rings, and, hundreds of kids are passing you left and right. And here's Father Welsh walking down the hall, and he knows your name. and he cares, and in that you sense, yes, he cares about me.
I can't think of a higher achievement than what Bob Welsh has done with St. Ignatius High School in getting the, building the student body, building the quality of them and the faculty, and all the time he's building character.
You've touched people's lives, Bob, sometimes when you weren't even aware.
Father Welsh made such a wonderful impression on Danny. I wanted him to be around us more. And we wanted him to come bless our house when we bought a new house and moved in. And we asked him when he came to dinner if he would bless the house. And so he brought his prayer book with him. And he stood in the hallway for a long time looking for the right page. And he said, "You'll have to excuse me. This isn't my usual area of expertise." And he went on to bless the house, and we had a wonderful dinner, and he made a lasting impression on my son, which meant the world to me.
We would talk about the status of the school together, just maybe what the students can do to improve it. In fact, we went up to Detroit back in early December, went up to University of Detroit High School to visit their new chapel. And in going up with him, the ride up, I got to know him more on a more personal level. Got to see him more as a person, more than just the figurehead of the school. And we even ate lunch at Burger King together, so.
Some people even have stories.
The first state championship was on a Sunday afternoon in Ohio State Stadium, and it was a dramatic victory and so on like that. And Father does a very wonderful job and really goes out of his way not to put pressure on the coaching staff, or it's okay, it's whatever happens is wonderful. And you can tell he wants to win, but there's that, oh, this will be fine, everything will be fine. So it was the game was on Sunday. We win dramatically, goal line stand. I think I slept 2 hours, right? And of course there's school the next day. And I remember getting there, and I'm walking down the hall, and Father Welsh didn't see me. He was walking down the hall, his back to me, and he turns into the treasurer's office. And as soon as he turns in, he's at the door, and he breaks into a dance.
Turns out that it was a really rainy day, and there were a lot of puddles around the mall area when crossing from the main building over to Loyola. And Father was crossing one day, and there was this big puddle in the middle of the mall. And as he came near, one of the students in my class, who is the class clown, ran up to Father, whipped off his jacket, and put it over the puddle, and then stepped in front of Father Welsh and bent down and said, "Father Welsh, why don't you jump on my back? I'll give you a piggyback ride." And Father Welsh laughed and looked at Raymond, and Ray is his name, and he looked at Ray and said, "Oh, Raymond, you rapscallion." And Ray laughed at that because he had no clue what a rapscallion was.
And even though you didn't like being in the public eye or asking people for donations, you responded with everything asked of you, and more.
So they said, you have to stay where you are and start expanding. And so I said, well, what do you do? So we had to get a board to help development. We had to get a person who would be in charge of the development office. And I looked around the faculty and I said, Welsh.
When he says he loves the school and he loves the kids and he loves working with them, this is not public relations.
Yeah, he's not aggressive as a fundraiser at all. And my experience with him has been, as a matter of fact, he's never asked me for anything, so that makes me feel good, really, because I'm delighted to be able to provide these various things, and that he's low pressure all the way. Maybe if he turned high pressure, he could raise twice as much money. I don't know.
there certainly is a talent for it. To make people feel good about giving away money is not an easy thing to have.
You did exactly what I'd hoped, Bob. You grew the school into a beautiful campus, while you quietly changed people's lives for the better.
Father Welsh has a plan. He has a plan. That's the amazing thing about it. He has tremendous vision of what that campus was going to look like. But it's more than just the aesthetics. It's what the feeling created for the students, for the faculty there. Certainly buildings contribute, but it also, it just inspires what goes on too.
How can I say the overall picture is marvelous? If you had a picture of it before and after, you could see. And I think he had a lot to do with it, with his, you know, the way he is, kindness, and the way he meets people.
Well, the cornerstone of the chapel has chiseled in stone, in Latin, "This is the house that Soap built." And I guess you could say that that's true.
You know, Bob, I've got more work for you to do while you're down there, but those folks at Ignatius are going to miss you, so don't be a stranger to them.
You know, the Irish never say goodbye. They always say, "Till we meet again."
Hello, Father Welsh. After 30 years together, St. Ignatius is certainly going to be different. Very different for me, at least, with you somewhere else. God bless you, and best of luck.
Father, I want to thank you for your many years of service and leadership here at St. Ignatius. I also want you to know that I will always cherish our trip to Glen Mills in Pennsylvania together. Those 6 hours together were wonderful. Thank you.
I always looked at him throughout high school as my model or the way to act, especially being around people and how to respond to people, how to interact with people. He also taught me how to pray. And when you're around Father Welsh, you always want to do your best.
I really thank God for his presence in my life.
You tell him I love him.
Amen.
Well done, good and faithful servant. Now, go out and work on that tee shot, will you?
Give me an I. Give me a G.
But if a boy hasn't had that opportunity to meet and become a friend of Christ, then I think we failed.